we are speaking about Henry Raeburn, perhaps this is a good moment to mention one of his most successful portraits, although it's been recently disputed whether or not he is the author, but most critics and art historians agree that he must be the author of this one. The Reverend Robert Walker skating on Dunningston Loch, or to make it short, the Skating Reverend. Uh, this is one of the most beloved Scottish paintings ever. It's in the National Gallery in Edinburgh, and just as there was a case with Haywain and with the Fighting Temeraire, this is the painting that wins all kinds of opinion polls and popularity contests for the favorite Scottish painting ever. So that's the one. It's quite interesting. It shows a Protestant minister actually skating on the frozen loch near Edinburgh, and so we have a man who, at least by profession, should be a serious, thinking man. But he's involved in a sporting activity. He is actually having a good time. Although, if you look at this painting in good quality version, you can see that there are some cracks in the eyes, so potentially there is an element of danger here, because there is a suggestion that the ice might break and the Reverend could be wet, or perhaps even drown or freeze in the cold water. So there could be some sort of symbolic meaning here, but otherwise this kind of contrast between the profession of the sitter and his activity is seen usually to be very Scottish, to combine Scottish Protestant seriousness, the kind of Protestantism that was most popular in Scotland, the Presbyterian Church, is much more strict and morally upright than the Church of England Protestantism. But on the other hand, the Scots have had a reputation of being down to earth and enjoying life's little pleasures, such as skating, perhaps. So there we go, the favorite painting of the Scots. There is also another name of the artist, an English artist who came to Scotland repeatedly, and he painted some of his best works there, that I would like you to remember, and this name is Edwin Landseer. He was one of the favorite painters of Queen Victoria, and when she and Prince Albert came to Balmoral Castle in Aberdeenshire in the 1840s, and soon they decided to buy the castle, to have it rebuilt, to have it extended. They were personally involved in the designing of the interiors especially, and this is something that especially Prince Albert was interested in. So everything there is tartans and sisals and all the Scottish symbols. In her diaries, Queen Victoria repeatedly mentioned that she loved Scotland for various reasons. She liked the people for their down-to-earth quality and their candidness. She also liked the views and the castles, because, as she wrote in her diaries, they reminded her of Germany, the native lands of Prince Albert, which Victoria visited on various family occasions. So that's really another reason why Scotland became so popular, because it looked like Germany, especially the castles, the Scottish baronial style. It looks like something from the Loire Valley or from Thuringen in Germany. So when Victoria came, and she came regularly to have holidays in Scotland, she was accompanied not only by her family, but also by Sir Edwin Landseer, who would document the Queen's visits, very often in the very romanticized style. So the Queen taking very informal walks, and Albert hunting and bringing home the dinner. Actually, Victoria liked to think about Prince Albert as a kind of alpha male, which he never really was, but she convinced herself and perhaps even himself that this was the case. And also painting the outdoors and the animals, especially of Scotland. And there are two paintings I would like to draw your attention to. One is probably the most famous painting by Edwin Landseer, and definitely his most famous Scottish painting, called The Monarch of the Glen, which shows a very majestic looking stag deer with huge antlers, with very proud look, and on the background of Scottish mountains. And this is a realistic painting of a stag deer, which has been interpreted in all kinds of ways by art historians and critics. I've read somewhere even religious interpretations that this animal is likened to Christ the King, so Christ in his glory, as a very majestic presence in the mountains. And on the other hand, there have been interpretations that this painting is really a proof of English cultural dominance, and even some sort of colonialist, imperialist treatment of Scotland by England. And to understand this, you have to remember that especially the Highlands, so the north of Scotland, became very popular with the aristocracy, both Scottish and increasingly English, who would go there and enjoy the pursuits such as the stag hunting. So they would actually hunt such animals. So proof that they were really the monarchs, or they were even in the entourage of the Queen herself, rather than the animals. And also the local people, especially the poor people, would be evicted from their homes in the series of the so-called Highland clearances, to create those vast uninhabited lands for the nobility to hunt in. So the life of the Scottish poor, of the Scottish peasants, was much worse off because of the passion of the English and also Scottish aristocracy for stag hunting. Another subject which is repeatedly present in Landseer's paintings are the dogs. He is sometimes called the Raphael of dogs. So if you remember George Stubbs and his great passion for horses, in the 19th century, in the Victorian period, we have Edwin Landseer and his great passion for dogs. He would paint dog portraits, like the portrait of Queen Victoria's favorite spaniel called Dash, or another one that you have here, a distinguished member of the Humane Society, and it shows a big, majestic-looking dog. Actually, the Humane Society was the society in London that tried to prevent poor people from jumping to their deaths into the River Thames. And they used some dogs, like this big dog in the picture, to rescue the drowning people from the River Thames. So this distinguished member of the Humane Society probably saved the lives of several would-be suicides. However, the most famous and probably the most memorable dog painting by Edwy Landseer was the painting that he did in 1837, so just as Victoria came to the throne. And this is one of the Scottish paintings. This is called The Old Shepherd's Chief Mourner, and it shows a sad little doggy resting his or her face very plaintively on the coffin of a man who was once its master, probably the old shepherd. We are in the 19th century, so 19th century paintings can be actually read like little poems or little short stories, and if you look up close at the old shepherd's chief mourner, you can find a lot of little hints about the life of the old shepherd and about his relationships with other people and with the dog, of course. So we have typically Scottish beret, which is called a tam o'shanter, which indicates this is a Scottish shepherd. The interior indicates that the man was single, either never married or widowed, perhaps. Possibly never married, but possibly his closest relationship was with this shepherd dog, because there's very little indication that there were people to mourn this man. There are just a couple of twigs that were left by human mourners, and now this poor doggy, like a grieving widow, is left to cry for her loss. There is a flask indicating that the man liked a bit of whiskey. There is a Bible indicating that after all he was a good Protestant Christian. And Queen Victoria loved this painting so much that she first bought it the moment she could, and in her very tragic hour, when she lost her beloved Prince Albert, she would even be inspired to a certain extent by this painting, because in some of the photographs taken by one of her sons in the first period of her bereavement, she has a very similar position of the head when she is looking at the sculpted bust of Prince Albert. So she just looks like this grieving doggy yearning for its master. So here we have the romantic vision of Scotland, with beautiful castles, with beautiful history, with Bonnie Prince Charlie. So here we have the last of the stewards, the man who wanted to be the Steward King, but he never managed to regain his crown. He was forced to retreat back to France, but he remained a kind of romantic hero in Scotland. So that's really the romantic vision of Scotland. But as you will see in a little moment, there is another side to the story of Scottish art.